Welcome to Leveraging Leadership, where we unpack the art of business leadership. I'm your host, Emily Sander, Chief of Staff turned Executive Leadership Coach. And this show is all about finding your points of greatest influence and leveraging them to better serve those around you. And today we are joined by guest Josh Nemes. And Josh, you have a fancy background due to your wife, and you're looking all snazzy, and she's the interior decorator there, but welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Appreciate you having me.
So you are the VP of Managed Services and Chief of Staff at Zengistics. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And I know that your COO had a big part in moving you into that Chief of Staff role. So maybe you were at the company before in a different department, in a different role. So maybe tell us how you got into Chief of Staff for the first time.
Yeah, sure. And you're right. So our COO at the time, who now serves as president, him and I had gotten close kind of in a year or so of being at the company. Initially, I was in a procurement role in our business, kind of on a motor carrier facing side. Had done that for, maybe a year and a half or so. Had gotten some good results, but, hadn't always and consistently delivered the value to the company that I was hoping. And so, there was an opportunity for me to interview for a director level position within the same department. And that's really where, my principal and I had gotten close at that time, and he had interviewed me, obviously. And the conversation had come back, and initially I was a little disappointed, right? He's like, "Hey, I don't think you're right. This is the right role for you." And so kind of off the cuff was, again, a little disappointed. I thought this was maybe an opportunity for me to move up in the company and take on a larger responsibility list. But really what was more encouraging was kind of the conversation that followed thereafter. And really was like, "Hey, I actually just think your skill set is fitted for something different. And I'm not sure really what that is yet. But trust me, I'm going to have a plan for you, and let's stay close." And so over the following months, he had kind of been able to give me some projects to work on that were really outside of the scope of what I was used to working on. And for me, that was kind of the first foyer into that, whether that was kind of officially Chief of Staff or not at that point. It didn't matter. It was something new for me to work through. And it gave me a lot of exposure to other parts of the business and really how to use more of my skill set to help drive the business forward. And that was kind of a cool unlock for me. And then, eventually a few months later, that position of Chief of Staff was formalized.
Well, first of all, kudos to your boss, because it sounds like, hey, skill set doesn't quite align over here, but let's stay in touch because something else is going to open up over here. So that's fantastic when that happens, even though it's a bit disappointing at the onset, but turns into a blessing in disguise. So I'm very glad that worked out for you. And then, so in the role, you knew about the company, you knew kind of the back end office pieces, and then you were exposed to all these different areas of the business. What's something that made you good at your job from where you had come from? So what kind of things were like, "Oh, it's advantageous that I know about this, this, and this, and I'm able to translate that to different parts of the business"?
Yeah, totally. So, I've been in transportation, logistics, freight for the entirety of my career. And prior to where I'm at now at Zengistics, my experience was pretty broad about kind of playing in a bunch of different arenas within that space. And so within customer-facing roles, within carrier-facing roles, within kind of some training roles, with kind of building out new service offerings. And so I knew a lot about I should say I knew a good amount about a lot of things, and kind of had this generalist skill set that really made it pretty easy for me to jump from one department to the next and really understand how that set of roles within that department kind of roll up into the greater vision of what we're doing, and of course the execution piece as well.
And I think it sounded like you were talking about you could translate things into someone's preferred language, meaning, okay, how is this going to land with you? And then when I'm with this person or this audience, I need to say it in a different way, but still get the message across. So you were pretty adept at doing those things.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that I'm pretty good at, for lack of better words, is being able to translate across the organization. And so, and I didn't really know I was good at that, to be transparent with you. And so, um, it's something that I kind of was able to learn on the fly and be able to leverage across different teams, and understanding that, hey, what does it mean for this person sitting in this seat? How that, if they do things differently, or how their job may affect this team over here. And they may just not really be able to put those two things together, because they're kind of locked into what their
Yeah.
tasks are. But really being able to just spend a little bit of time across teams, and really paint the picture from a different point of view, and frame it in a way that they can apply that to their day to day. I think just gives everybody a more kind of level loaded understanding of what we're all working towards.
And I mean, you're versed in finance and kind of the analytical part of it. And for some people, they speak that language. But if you say OPEX and CapEx to a lot of people, they're going to give you like polite stares and like, I don't know what you're talking about. What does that mean for me and my team? But you're able to kind of bridge that divide, it sounded like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. And it's funny that sometimes when we have skill sets that we're just like, well, I just do that. I just kind of take that for granted. That's crucial and critical to the chief of staff role, where people are like, how do you do that? How do you
Mhm.
translate that from that? How do you connect those dots? And you're like, I can't explain it. I just, I just
Yeah.
do it. I didn't know I was good at that. So
Yeah, for
that's,
sure.
that's
That's
fantastic.
it is. It's something that I think is really cool about the role, and really kind of, your own professional development, is be able to be put in situations where maybe somebody else sees something in you that you're not really understanding how to leverage that. But the more you do it, you kind of realize that, yeah, okay, this is something that I guess you're right, I took for granted, or it's easier for me to maybe deliver this message than it is for other people. And maybe I don't know why, but just lean into that, and be able to continue to help, and where you can.
Now you have a dual role. So you have two roles, which is pretty common for chief of staff. So a lot of people are chief of staff and something else. So you're a VP and a chief of staff. So I'm wondering, how first of all, what's your time split, would you say, like percentage wise, to your VP duties and responsibilities versus your chief of staff duties and responsibilities?
Yeah, I would say, it's evolved a little bit over time. I think, currently, we're in a growth phase. And so, I spend a lot of time with our customers. And so, right now it's probably, an 80-20 split, maybe even more kind of leaning higher towards the VP side of things. But really it's every day at some point in the day too, where I kind of put the chief of staff hat on, and really kind of look to play across our leadership team, and not just staying in my lane, and understanding that, hey, this is something that finance needs help with, and yeah, it may not directly affect my team, but in one way or another it will. And so I actually think kind of doing the dual role has really helped me, maybe be a more efficient chief of staff at times, when I'm not always playing in that space, but when I do, I kind of have a greater understanding of really how it's affecting some of the revenue and our customers' experience. And it's been a really cool way to be able to split it.
Yes, and I played a dual role, so I filled some gaps, some pretty big leadership gaps we had on the team for pretty long periods of time. And I can understand what you're saying. Sometimes it was 80-20, sometimes it was like 92-8, sometimes it was 50-50. And so it would kind of evolve and be dynamic as you went along. But how did you, so I remember being in meetings where I'm chief of staff, but I'm also for the next 18 months in charge of this operational area. And so I need to advocate on this side in a certain sense, but also put on my chief of staff hat on and say, well, I'm advocating for what's best for the business. So I was just curious on your experience and how you approach those scenarios.
Yeah, that's tough. It's challenging, sure. Because I think one of the main differences is, and at least for me, I didn't necessarily have a team that was direct reports in the chief of staff role. And, in the VP role, of course I do. Right. And so, I think honestly, always looking out for my team and making sure they're in the best position to succeed and grow and have more opportunities. That's where my mind goes a lot of the time. And the customers that I have great relationships with as well. But really, I think, what it comes down to for me is when I'm in those situations is really kind of drawing it back to, okay, well, let's get simple. Why are we all here? Right. What is the overarching strategy of the business? And I think that kind of lends more towards the chief of staff side and understanding that, hey, this is what we're trying to do as an organization. And, my piece is just one piece of it here. And so kind of understanding that, okay, you got to walk this back a little and maybe kind of take a step back and understand that, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. So let's start back at the higher level and kind of work backwards from there. That's where I found it's been the most easy to kind of tie things back together.
I love that line. Why are we all here?
Yeah.
That's a good level setting question when everyone's kind of getting all up in arms about different things. It's like, hold on, like, let's zoom out. Why are we all here? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, for this purpose. So that's a great level set for people. And then how do you interact with your COO and now president? Is that, I guess, do both roles report to that person directly?
Yep.
Okay.
They do. And, I think, he probably, views me the same then as he did now. Right. But it's more of, hey, you just have more ownership over this piece of it now. And so, the relationship is strong and we talk all the time. And there's always a, hey, quick pop into my office to talk about this. And to talk about that. It's kind of wherever his mind is at during the time of, hey, has to do with, this role when your customers here and understanding this piece of it. We have to do, figure out this commercial strategy or understanding these guys' business on a different level to give them, some more consulting, but also, hey, we have key hires that we need to make. I need your advice on this. I need you to interview this person. Hey, can you look at a macro breakdown of our financial performance and kind of help me understand what I'm missing, right? And so the asks kind of bounce back and forth. And I think that's why him and I have a strong relationship is that I'm able to deliver on both sides of the coin there. But it's there's no real formality. It just kind of all happens all at once all together.
Sounds like there's a lot of switching or context switching throughout the day, like rapid fire. Even in the same conversation with your boss, we could be talking about VP stuff and then chief of staff stuff. And there's a lot of overlap in some of that stuff anyway, type of
Yeah,
thing. So, okay,
absolutely.
very dynamic, very, very fast paced. And I'm curious. So when I was in those dual roles, sometimes people would interact with me for VP stuff. And then sometimes they would interact with me with chief of staff. And there were only a handful of times where people kind of got confused. I'm like, wait, are you advocating for your team because that's your team? Or are you advocating for that because that's what you think is best for the business as chief of staff? So I'm wondering just how are your interactions with your different leadership executives?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's one I'll go ask everybody. Uh, but I think the good news is we have a pretty tight knit leadership team. Most of us on that team have been there for a good amount of time, at least 18 months plus. And so I think the dynamic and the working relationship, most people kind of just understand through the context of conversation of kind of where I'm coming from at it. But no doubt there has to be some clear, I guess, dividers in certain conversations of saying, hey, well, this is kind of a conversation about the business and let's just kind of strip down roles, titles, and just as leadership team members, this is what we're talking about for the business. And other times it's very much so, hey, this is how my team is playing with your team and understanding the dynamics there that have to happen and maybe some of the collaboration that is or isn't happening. Right. And so I think there's a lot of it, just kind of like some of the other stuff that we've talked about is really dependent on in what context those conversations are happening. and making sure that we're just communicating through, really, whether it's at a, kind of what level of the organization are we talking about. And most of the time that's clear, but no doubt it is a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think some conversations are like either or specific to this or specific to that, but most of them are blended. People are just kind of approaching you or approaching me as in our different roles. And I remember there were certain times when I had to be almost like here's what I think we should do, and yes, it benefits my team, but I'm also open to other ideas. I'm not just saying that to promote the team that I'm leading right now, just to be very, very clear and transparent with people
Yeah.
about why I was saying that, or even just say sometimes I would think we needed to do something in operations, but I would present that as trade-offs. So, hey, if we go this way, here are the pros and cons for this team. And if we go that way, here are the pros and cons for this team, and not necessarily do a big push, because sometimes it would be taken in the wrong way. So I just found that interesting in group settings. So yeah,
Yeah.
just interesting and curious to hear about your experience with it too.
Sure.
So chief of staff is a fast-paced role. VP is a fast-paced role, and it takes a lot of energy. And those are definitely not punch in, punch out type of roles. So how do you take your mind away from things, or take care of yourself, get rest, hydrated, all those good things? How do you set yourself up for success in those ways?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that was something that I learned pretty quickly, getting exposed to, senior leadership is understanding that there's definitely no punch clock, and the business never really sleeps, especially in our world. And so, yeah, it is tough. I think for me, I have a great support system at home. I've a great partner and wife who is there for me and supports me in a lot of ways, and two young kids. And so a 4-year-old girl and a little boy who's about 18 months. And so,
Oh,
yeah, it's a handful there too, but it's really actually a pretty grounding experience coming home and being able to, put my phone down, shut the laptop for a couple hours, do the dinner bedtime routine with them, and just have that experience as saying, okay, this is time for me and my family to enjoy each other's company and get caught up on the day, and kind of a time to rest and level set. Certainly there are times where nights you gotta kind of put in some time on some stuff that, maybe isn't as much collaborative as where, when I'm in office, we're in a lot of meetings, we're discussing things, we're putting action plans together. And then kind of the deeper analytical stuff is done on nights and weekends sometimes, right? When I have some time, but, really trying to stay balanced, waking up early, trying to get some things done before the day gets started. And I'm a big proponent of walks, so I don't know if anyone on my team notices where I go for 25 or 30 minutes at a time. I'll oftentimes, at least once a day, I'll pop out and just take a walk around the neighborhood where our office is in, or we're near the river in downtown Austin, to kind of go and just get some vitamin D, get the
Yep.
muscles moving a little bit. And I found it really kind of helps clear my head when I come back and actually have a little bit more brain power to go ahead and tackle what's ever ahead of me for the next few hours.
Walks are so good for you. You get
Yeah,
outside, like literally the blood is moving. You're
yeah,
in nature. You're breathing fresh air. Yeah,
absolutely.
walks are critical. So get those walks in if you can, chiefs of staff.
Right.
Yes, yes. So if you had some advice to give your fellow chiefs of staff in terms of a dual role, or maybe um, balancing things with self-care and with running hard and hustling and adding value in a high quality way across the board, any advice, what pops up for you? And like, people need to know about this. This is often forgotten about.
Yeah, I think especially in a dual role, it's easy to you know it's easy to put a lot on your plate. And I think that really being able to prioritize high value tasks, in high value projects is for me really important, right? And with a team, there is the ability to delegate more. And so I know, most leaders are going to say something like that, but I do think if you're in a role where you have a chief of staff responsibility and a leadership responsibility that develop your team, make sure that you're delegating out the right tasks to the right team. Try to find your own quote unquote chief of staff if you can, and make sure that what you're really spending time on benefits the business at large. Because if you're focusing on items or projects that really drive the strategy of the business as a whole, where you're sitting next to, a CEO or a president, or anyone else in the C-suite, eventually that's going to benefit your team, and your team will shine on it anyways. And so I think really prioritizing, the tasks that are going to move the needle the most. And then again, making sure that you take some time to recharge. You take breaks, close your email for 2 hours. It's going to be fine. Get outside and walk around.
And I know you're a sports fan. So is it too soon to talk about the Detroit Lions and their heartbreaking season? It was a great run.
I think last time we spoke, it was a little too soon. But no, Lions had a great season. I think everyone was pretty disappointed after the NFC title game, but it was a fantastic season. One that, as a Lions fan, prior to this year, I think the last time they'd won a playoff game, I was in diapers. So it was cool to see them win a couple in a row and have a chance at the Super Bowl, even if they didn't ultimately get there.
Yeah. Do you think they can do it again?
I do. Yeah. Dan Campbell's my guy.
I love Dan Campbell. He's a great coach.
He is. And we've seen, it's funny. We use a lot of sports metaphors around the office. And there was a Dan Campbell clip that was shown at a leadership meeting at one point. And so definitely a big fan. I think they'll be right back at it, and Super Bowl or bust in 2025.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, Josh, thank you so much for stopping by. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I think you've given people a lot of good insight, especially about that dual role. So thank you so much. And we'll keep in touch and see. Lions are your team. I'm a Seahawks fan, but when the Seahawks don't make it to the playoffs, I switch over to the Lions pretty quickly because they're a great team and have a great coach. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Emily.
If you'd like some more information on the topic discussed in this episode, head over to nextlevel.coach and click on the resources page for some helpful free downloads.